What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast, Corner Talks. We have Marc Anthony Sarria, good friend from high school. How's it going, buddy?
Oh man, we're doing all right, sticking in tight. Phase 2 COVID lockdown, but doing everything I can to stay sane,
Yeah.
stay creative.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I'm a new dad to a second baby, so phase 2 dad mode.
Yeah, there's so much to catch up on, man. And the fact that you just said that you're a father now, you have a family, beautiful family, I should add. And yeah, a lot of things look great on your end. And just a lot to catch up on. To give you guys some context, we've known each other since the ninth grade. We took visual arts. That was our first class, right? Together. We got
Yeah.
Paolini, Mr. Paolini, another legend. Another guy that great guy, great mentor. I can't remember that class learning much about the actual art form, but
the guy was sorry, go ahead. I was like,
no,
that guy was one of those guys that you took the class. You liked visual arts, but this guy was like a freebie course. But he had his moments, I remember.
But see, it's not to talk shit, because this guy, he was listening. He agreed. It was kind of one of those things. I remember him telling me, like, it's either you got it or you don't. And half these kids don't got it. I'm like, thanks for telling me.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But he was just, it was more like a whiplash. Like, why are you dragging or you're rushing?
Exactly, bro. I actually saw that movie again. I love that movie. I saw that movie last week just to refresh.
Yeah.
What a fucking killer movie.
Yeah, amazing movie, bro. Amazing movie.
Oh, sorry.
No,
are we swearing or no swearing in this?
What? No, bro. It's okay, man. We'll just put the explicit tag.
Okay. So, go on. I just needed to know how explicit I can be.
For all the people under 18, don't worry about it. So we did art class. And so what made you take, like, for me, when I took visual arts, it was just kind of to get into the arts, like I had a knack for like doing some painting and drawing. And quite recently, I'll talk about it more, but during the pandemic, I did my those artworks of, I don't know if you see my 94 Productions Instagram. I do like nostalgic characters, right? Like characters we grew up on. Partly because it's easy for me to draw. Like I just see it as shapes. If I can't do like Renaissance paintings yet. That's something that I plan to work towards, but I'm not at Mona Lisa level. However, I took that class as like a little bit of an into the like art world and just like kind of expand my creativity. And I remember you taking that course, but you also took drama, which is something I kind of regret on my end. So tell us about that. Like, what were your experiences with the two?
So actually, before I got into everything I'm doing now in film, my previous experiences as an actor, I actually went to St. E's. It was not my how do you say, like, jurisdiction school. Like I went out of my way to go to E's because I was actually down the street from St. Joan of Arc, which was another high school. Mm-hmm. And I went here specifically because it was an art school, and I went there for visual art because I actually draw very well. So that was my main motive. And I had a lot of friends going to the school. So it was kind of like keeping a balance of like actually what I wanted to achieve in school, what I wanted to develop, as well as just the people I wanted to keep around me. But initially, before I got into filmmaking, acting, it was visual art and doing sketch work, mainly, less than painting. Mm-hmm. But that was my main focus, and I really got into it. And then obviously being at an art school, you start to befriend a lot of people with a lot of different skills. You start to get a little glimpse into like different areas of art. And I began to really sort of resonate with other types of art that I didn't have many people in my life, like in my family, sort of push me towards. So it's kind of like, and I feel like nobody's really pushing anybody towards an art career. Like that's sort of something as a parent, and as a parent, even now, I'm like, like me and my fiance talk all the time. I'm like, like as a parent, and even though I've experienced my experiences, like you want to push your kid towards the absolute success, you know what I mean? Like things that don't really require too much luck or too much like right place at the right time. And I get that perspective now, and I more so understand my parents now than I did back in the day, where it's like they wanted me to pursue something that was a little bit more concrete. a little
Hmm.
bit more with like a for sure future, right? So I feel like if you're getting into the arts, it's a huge risk, but if it's something that you're passionate about, and bro, like I even in what it is that I do as my day job today, my absolute focus has always been my happiness.
Right.
And
That's
whether or
great, man.
not and I've been in situations where I've turned down positions that would have given me a significant more amount of money, but when I look at it from a longevity perspective
Hmm.
and basically what I would be the most happiest doing, I don't care if I'm making 15 grand more, like that, like as a creative I want to be able to have my freedoms to exercise my ability to expand my development and growth in that field. And we'll talk a little bit, we'll build a little bit more to this, but
Yeah, for sure, man.
for what I do as like a main job, like I work for a corporate company doing graphic design work, multimedia work, and I'm very fortunate to have the amount of creative freedom that I do in a space like this, because typically it's very cookie cutter. And one of the, like I mentioned, I've been in situations where I've turned down a lot of money to maintain my creative freedoms. So,
Hmm.
and I'm fortunate as well that my wife to be is like, it's like a relationship's like a balance. You know what I
Of
mean?
course, man. Yeah.
Like I'm the creative one, the one who has all these passions and need to
Yes.
be driven by happiness.
Yeah.
And luckily, my wife to be is someone who's very passionate about what she does, but isn't
Nice.
very specific about where that needs to be. So
Right.
she's like that rock, and I'm like that person who needs to fluctuate to fit in and be happy with where I
Yeah.
need to be.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the high school thing. I started out in visual art and then started to develop my interest in film and acting.
Nice.
And I don't know if you remember anything about me back in the day. Maybe that's the only memories you have of me. But like I wasn't too serious at the time. I was very loosey goosey, sort of just trying to
You're just
make some
happy-go-lucky. Happy-go-lucky, man.
happy-go-lucky, which is exactly how I would explain myself. That was my
You're a
mindset.
free
Like
spirit, bro. I love it.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And everybody's at their own pace, but my pace in high school was just to have a good time
Hmm. I remember
and
that, man.
and and I've always maintained that positivity, but more so towards like my late teens, early 20s, I've really sort of been able to find a platform for myself
That's
where I
great.
can be successful in my art, which is, I think, everything that we can hope for as
Yeah,
creatives.
for sure.
So
But I wanted to mention, I'm really happy you mentioned high school because, and the whole thing about remembering you, because how I remember you, it's exactly that. I was the opposite. I was, as much as I had fun with, friends and you guys and stuff, I know I took myself very serious, and I still do. But I know in high school, I just had a lot of pressure because, the idea of fitting in and so, social, like being social with people, and just, I don't know, it's all these different pressures a teenager would face. And I kind of admire, when I look back, the character you were, and the fact that you took the shot to go for drama and you took these acting lessons. And I remember I never really appreciated that, because we deal with, as artists, a lot of the pressures. Now we don't really give a shit, but when we were in high school, I remember like not even voicing like I was interested in film, or even when I did, I remember like um, a classmate, thinking like, what are you, a girl? What are you, a homosexual? Like, you know what I mean? Like, just completely out of left field, like, yeah, out of context, like completely doesn't understand what I'm trying to pursue, or what I'm trying to achieve, because of the arrogance, the ignorance, right?
mm.
However, I just, back to high school. It's like, did you ever go through like those kinds of pressures, or those kinds of like,
So
I
here's
don't
the
know,
thing.
judgments?
So here's the thing, and I think that a lot of people, a lot of creatives will be able to relate. And touching on back to what I was saying about sort of that support from your family, like unless you have that sort of real support from your family to do a creative or pursue a creative career in like art, there's there's not like I strongly believe that if that's not nurtured at home, that's something you need to create a space for as an individual. And your success is completely reliant on how much and how hard you pursue that circle or that space that you're able to develop yourself. Because I am coming from a family of accountants and bankers, and that's what they wanted me to do. Didn't really understand my pursuit in art. And at the time, I didn't feel like I really connected with anybody where that had a real connection to something that would make this a reality in the future. Like, sure, we're pursuing this in high school. What are the job opportunities? What am I able to actually achieve from this pursuit? And I didn't know that at the time, and that's actually when I started to get into acting, because I had an in with that. And actually, it was I didn't start until my senior year, but one of my good friends at the time, and even still, Madison Hartloff, she was in the drama program, and she was actually one of the people who got me in.
Right.
And she was one of the people who got me to star in one of the productions at St. Elizabeth. And it just so happened to be one of those productions that was actually being like critiqued from like a bunch of people across Canada. It was called the Sears Festival, and people would come to actually critique and judge all these high schools putting on this performance. And it would be like a mini. It felt like a mini Oscars. It felt like best play, best lead actor, best whatever.
Mm.
And I got a lot of positive reinforcement after that performance. And Maddie, my friend, was actually already represented by an agent, and she had attended the production. So at the end of it, when we're all out, you know, like shaking hands, saying hi to everybody, she approached me, her agent, and basically gave me a huge kudos on my performance. And the only thing I'd ever done publicly. Before that, I had just expressed interest and attended my classes, but this was the first time I had ever been recognized for anything in a positive light, I think, from like somebody who I didn't even really know. And she offered me a spot on her roster, and it was then that was it from there. Like I actually started to get sent out for auditions, and the first audition I ever got, the first audition I ever went on, I got.
Oh, wow. Is this the, I want to mention, is this Degrassi?
No.
Oh, okay.
We'll get there. But the first thing I ever got was this music video that was on Family Channel.
Oh, okay.
And
I don't remember that.
So that was the first thing I was ever in. It was by a artist at the time called Being Veronica. Her name is just Veronica now.
Okay, yeah.
But she had a video, and I played her lead love interest. And I remember.
Oh my God. Is it on YouTube for everyone to watch?
It is.
Okay,
so
I definitely gotta check that out.
So Busted by Veronica, and then you're gonna see. Maybe it might even click in, because a lot of people I have people still recognizing me from there, but being like, oh, I had no idea at the time that this was even you. I've totally seen this fucking video.
Right.
But it was like, I never really put two and two together. And now I have a completely different look, like at the time. And
I'm trying to like find it as you're speaking, like, cause
like I have the worst hair genes, but
the worst genes.
Look, because back in the day, I had like a fucking coif. I had a whole thing, and I was actually quite like, that was like my point of pride. And I feel like for whatever reason, the karma that came to bite me in the ass was to take my hair away. So I actually have a bald head, and I don't know if you've seen my Instagram.
No, I you know what? I seen it, but you're still the same guy to me, man. Like again, the only thing that I remember with the haircut is back in grade 9. We were fans of Ned Declassified School Survival Guide.
I was coconut head, man.
Because we all were into that. Like even my hair, bro. I'm wearing a hat right now, but if I let it down, it's gonna all move this way for some reason, like cover my face.
That's hilarious, man. Like, honest. But this is what I go back and look at, because and like when you look back at like high school photos, and anybody watching this, if it, however old you are, you're looking back at high school, you're like, what the fuck was I doing with that hair, whatever. And it's like, that was totally cool for the time, you know what I mean? Like
it was there
was a phase, and I'm happy I went through it young, because my parents always come up to me, she's like, yo, that was a beat look for you, son. And I'm like, thank you for letting me go through that young, because actually, not come to think about it, I wouldn't have actually been able to ever experience that at this age, because my hairline is non-existent. But I got that done at the time, and you're like, honestly, we wanted to cut your hair for so long, but that was totally in at the time, and I remember that. But in any case, So back to
the story about the audition. So I'm curious. I'm sure like the audience listening, or people even from high school, or anyone really that just knows you. Like I'm always curious, whatever happened with how you got into Degrassi, because I remember seeing you on a few episodes, and you know what transpired after that. Like what kind of happened? What led you into maybe pursuing a path with production and
Yeah.
filmmaking, kind of that transition. So walk us through that. Like, I want to hear that story.
So I have a whole thing, and in the last in the last 8 years or so, I really started to seriously pursue what it is that I'm doing, um, from behind the scenes production perspective.
Hmm.
When I was in high school, like I mentioned, like I wasn't a super studious student, and I feel like I really resonated with art and went from visual to acting. And I feel like I rode on that so hard because I knew I wasn't a very academic student, and I was always looking for my next excuse to pursue, or like to get out of school essentially. and
Oh,
and
okay.
and this is where I think personalities come into
I'm
play,
laughing.
because
I just want to say,
there's
like, Paulini must have really scarred you to get out of school
what
as soon
so
as you took that art class.
so what it is, and like there's like there's a lot of people that I know that are not, that are so smart but not book smart,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they're intelligent at pursuing like an entrepreneurial sort of venture, but like when it comes to like book smart, it's like they have their connections. And there's like two different types of people who are academic and people who are sort of jump in, make your connections, develop your skills along the way.
yeah.
And I feel like that's a lot more of the kind of personality that I resonate with. And so when I was in high school, and after that performance in grade 12, I had really started to pursue the acting route. And I got put up for auditions for movies, for TV shows. I got so close to so many opportunities in like film. And it's such a long process and such a trying time and trying process in this industry, where it's like you have to learn how to accept rejection, right? And it's
Yeah,
not,
for sure.
and the fact of the matter is, like, I know so many people in the industry, and a lot of the time it's not even your skill. It's like something, it's from a look perspective, like
Oh,
from a
yeah.
look basis, like that's why you see so many actors that maybe don't have the proper acting,
Yeah, but they got the
um
look, like the
but they got the
presence, right?
look, and
Yeah,
then
they fit the role.
there's
A big thing is
cast.
referrals. I just want to say, like, when I was looking for some jobs in the industry, not so much on screen, but it goes both ways, like behind the scenes. I've been told, like, I thought I was qualified, like I was passionate, I had the experience, whatever, and they just say, sorry, we took someone else based
Yeah,
off referral. And you know what that means? Usually, and especially in show business, that's nepotism, or just someone knows someone, right?
that's
Which
right.
is any industry. But I'd laugh because I'm like, if they only took the guy like in your situation that really like was meant for the role, you know what I mean?
100%. And like I kind of broke into that mentality of like realizing what was prioritized at an early age, which I think helped me with my approach when it came to like dealing with rejection and dealing with different types of casting directors. Is that who's casting for the look, who's casting for the talent, and you kind of know how to appeal to either those people if you're intelligent in how you approach it. So so there's always that, and there's always that rejection. And at the time, I think I was riding very hard on the acting piece, because that's something that I can pursue with just my raw talent alone. And I feel like I didn't really pursue or develop any sort of technical skills when it came to anything like that. So I was riding on the acting thing very hard. And then the more jobs I got, including Degrassi, including a bunch of commercials I've done, some short films that I've done with some really close people, um, I started to take a look behind the scenes, and I started to, and when you're like on a professional production, you're waiting all day. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah,
could be
for sure,
waiting
man.
for hours. You could be on set for like X amount of time. They're setting up. You're just chilling until you do your thing. And
Yeah,
I found that to be very boring. And
right.
I know a lot of people in the industry of like being models and actors and even singers, but more so the actors and the models, is like you're kind of there, you're kind of waiting until you're doing your thing. And I find that to be very boring. I need to be very um, engaged. So I always took those off times to like befriend people behind the scenes, sort of get to know the writers, get to know the crew, get to know like anybody who could be involved back there.
Right.
And they would often like, talk about their life, talk about their pursuits, talk about their skills. And that's when I started to really sort of perk up and be like, oh, that's interesting. Like I actually really enjoy that. And going back to high school, like I didn't have an outlet, but I knew that I was some sort of personality and that I wanted to like put myself out there. So I started a YouTube channel called the Marc Sarria Special.
Yeah, that's right.
And at the time I was just doing like, it was like a comedy. I wanted to just be light, funny, and I started to do some like online chat videos. I would just record the screen and like be that personality, just like on these chat sites.
Personality we all love.
Talking to people.
Yeah.
And which was, I felt, a great outlet for me at the time. And at that time, I that's when I started to get into video editing, because I would start to just like throw these videos together, and then as each video went by, I would like be more inspired to put a little bit more production value in it and to put more effects, text, all this. And it all started from there. I didn't have a real outlet to put that in, but I'm like, I'm young. I don't really have anything else to do with my time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
it's the best time to do it. Right. And you're still young, I should mention. We're the same age. We're 26, we're in our 20s. And even though you're starting a family, I really admire the fact that you're balancing it as well. Right. You're still, like you said, trying to pursue your dream, but you also, are aware of, you have kids now and you're trying to, give them the best life. But again, you're not completely shutting it out of the picture. You're just trying to like prioritizing what's important.
100%.
And I really admire that, because there's many people that they get to a certain age and they feel like, oh, like this is it. Like I'm going to work now 9 to 5 and going to come home and just relax. You know what I mean? But you're always hustling, you're always putting out stuff.
Yeah. And there's something important that I don't think I've ever voiced publicly. And I feel like maybe this might be a good opportunity for me to like sort of share a little bit more about myself. And 2019 was one of the biggest years for development for myself.
Wow.
from a mental perspective. And this is like before that, and that was around the time where I actually started my proper day job and what it is that I do in multimedia. Aside from my hustle of working at my own production ventures. But at the time, I was working in the bar industry in downtown Toronto, and I began to sort of lose myself at that time. This was around the time where I should have been in college. I had enrolled in a few courses. I had never found something that actually resonated with what it is that I wanted to do, because I knew so badly that I wanted to pursue something in art, in some sort of production. And I was pushed from all angles of my life, my family, my friends, like to pursue something in business, to pursue something more solid. And I tried my hand at a few things, and there are things that I resonated with in those pursuits, and are definitely skills that I carry on to what it is that I pursue now. So nothing was wasted, but I'm happy that I had that time to sort of find myself. And something that I've always loved about my time in the bar industry is that it was a very social time. It was something, and I worked at a place that brought a lot of different kinds of personalities, and it was to be specific, it was a restaurant called Joey's at Yorkdale Mall.
That's where we met up. Do you remember?
Yes.
I ran into you twice though. Yeah. So we have seen each other in between that 10-year span, we should mention. Because now it's coming about. I just want to interject and just mention this. We ran into each other first at Ryerson, right? Because all these stories are connecting now. I saw you at that point in your life. And we both looked at each other. I remember it was like, what's going on? And we were like the loudest people. We're like, yo. And then we saw each other at the Joey Yorkdale, and I'm like, what's happening? What are you doing? What's going on? So please continue your story. I just wanted to mention that because that was like a really fun time.
it's all connecting.
You have to be there. It's one of those you have to be there, all right, guys?
It all connects, but yeah. So that time was a really good experience for me to sort of develop my social skills and like my ability to connect with random people on like an hour-to-hour basis every single day, and it really developed that energy that I carried, I think, most of my life, but it helped me carry that into like my early adulthood.
Channel that energy.
And I actually scored my full-time job because I work for corporate TD,
Hmm.
doing multimedia work. But I scored that job on the bar, and I met so many people. I used to get so
Wow.
many offers to do sales, work at car dealerships, work
See?
at all these things, and it was
Yeah.
great because like people were always drawn to like the energy that I put out,
Yeah, of course, man.
for me in this pursuit of finding something to satisfy my creative needs, it was just finding the right outlet to pursue it in, because I'm
Right.
like I knew I was not someone who needed to be. I'm not someone who settles
Yeah.
for anything,
Hmm.
and I think that's so important, and that takes me into so many different parts of my life, but to this day, and I'll touch back about what I was
Yeah,
experiencing
for
in
sure.
2019, but to this day, I've never completed a full term of anything in school, and
Oh,
I've jumped from like course to course, program to program, and always kind of in the moment finding something like a job or something that gave me some excuse to sort of get out of there. And like I always prided myself in like my ability to network, because that's really like we were mentioning, like even in getting jobs in the industry and things with referrals, it's like networking, right? So that's really what I began to focus on. And like you can have all of this like academic experience, all of this history, all this knowledge, but really once you get into the field, it's your ability to network and it's your ability
yeah.
to really flex those skills
Sell
on the
your
go
brand, which is yourself, like your name.
with the people who you're intending to sort of be a part of. So that's always been my approach. I've always been really easy to talk to, really um, good energy, and that's something that I've really sort of capitalized on in my life and has really resulted in a lot of my successes. Is just my ability to communicate with people, my
Yeah.
ability to really connect, and that's something even to this day that I'm really working on, and especially in this landscape now, like it's so difficult to stay in touch with people, so difficult to really maintain connection, that it was really discouraging to me, because all of the connects that I had developed throughout 2019, early 2020, before COVID, it
Mm.
kind of felt like things kind of fell to the side. And now that we're reaching almost the year point in COVID,
Hmm.
like there's everyone's kind of starting from square one, you know, like we're kind
Yeah,
of
man.
in a position where we're starting, that we have to reassess our goals, we have to
Yeah.
reassess our approach, because we don't have the same opportunities to pursue those things anymore. So
Yeah.
really what I've been focusing on is keeping that network going, um, really taking advantage of moments where I can be creative. It's one of the only things that keep me sane. And I know that I recently previewed something to you that I haven't released yet.
Yeah.
Um, but but I really try to keep that going on in the background so that I can be fulfilled as a person, because I need that creative um, side hustle.
It's the itch, man. You gotta scratch the itch.
You
You
have
know, the
to,
creative itch, right?
you have to. No one's gonna do that for you, you know.
Yeah.
And the more you do, the more people will see your content, the more people will want to collaborate with you. So I'm just always in a mindset of getting things done, um, adapting, and
Hmm.
um, really just pushing my limit and my ability to stay strong. And I feel like a lot of us are doing the same. So
Yeah. It's I just want to touch on some points there where first thing, that's how we reconnected, I believe, is I was just constantly like putting stuff out there, and we connected through LinkedIn, and I said, "Oh my God!" Like we probably both identified we were in the industry, and I said, "I have first of all, I have to message. We call you Saria, not Mark. Well, I call you Saria, that is." And I said, "I have to message Saria because I haven't talked to him in so long. I need to catch up with him." And then through the conversation, we realized we're both in the industry, and we pretty much are doing the same thing, like the same path. Like we created our own little production company, and we're using that as a way to network and leverage our talents and creativity and connect to people that can connect us to more people and just keep expanding from there. And even with like school, I'm glad you mentioned that with back to academics. Is I went to university, and I was fortunate enough to be able to complete a university degree. But I know for while I was in there, it was very frustrating for me, and there was times when I wanted to drop out because I'm just such a creative individual that I would get really bored and very distracted. But I think it's my discipline that takes over,
What did you study?
Marketing. And I studied marketing because I wanted to get into the creative field. And when I graduated, the interesting thing is I realized, it's going to be very tough to find a job that allows you to be that creative, especially in marketing right away. And I took some roles like as a coordinator in different businesses and like in the industry, Warner Brothers, E1, but I just never really found, I couldn't get my hands dirty. Like I couldn't be on set. And I realized I didn't really know what my true passion was. I just knew I loved movies. And then I started to realize when I would shadow fellow directors like in the city through connections, like again, back to what you were saying, through your job, you would meet someone or they refer you to someone. I realized, wow, like I actually want to be on set. Like I enjoy, collaborating and, creating, but I didn't like being the assistant the whole time. I wanted to be in it. So I realized you have to pick up a camera and do it yourself. And through the editing and the shooting and, connecting with actors and different sort of talents, you develop your own kind of network. And it's been quite an interesting ride. And it kind of like, I appreciate you being honest and like mentioning the fact that you were doing your thing, like, because I remember seeing you at Joy Yorkdale and you were explaining like you were still at the time, were you still pursuing acting? Were you doing auditions?
Yeah,
You were, right? Yeah.
so mainly while I was at Joey's and in the film industry, that was like the prime side gig to an actor because it was very
Right, of
flexible
course.
and you're able to do that. But I wanted to touch back on
Hmm.
something that you were saying. And it was about getting into the film industry. And this was absolutely something that was going through my head as I was deciding what path I wanted to take. And the fact of the matter was, I had already started a family at that point by the time
Right.
I was really considering that. And what I understood about that industry was that, like, before you started to make a decent amount of money, like,
Yeah.
you're in there volunteering, you're in there
Yeah.
getting whatever chance, whatever shot you can take, whatever connection you can make to, like, just be present in an environment
Just get a call
that
back.
just to get something. And it
Yeah, yeah.
and to me, it was never an option because I needed some form of security. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It wasn't
Of
just
course, man.
myself I was providing for at the time. And that's the only reason, that's the biggest reason as to why I didn't pursue that field first. And I went into more of a safe day job environment, whereas corporate,
Hmm.
to make the money that I wanted to
No.
make
Yeah.
to support myself. And now that I've done that for about 3 years now,
Nice.
and I've raised my kids and, well, my daughter, at least my son
Hmm.
is 6 years old, sorry, 6 months old,
Yeah.
but
Congratulations again.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I took when my daughter was born, I took time off of acting. And that's when I started to seriously pursue like my career as like a multimedia specialist, someone who works in video and photography for an establishment that would pay me the money that was due. Um, but it was mainly an avenue for me to pursue that whole concept of, when you get a job, it's like it's based on education or equal work experience. And I knew that
Yeah.
I didn't have the diploma to back it up. I knew that I didn't have, and this is going to completely lead into why my hustle is still so active. And
Right.
it's because I don't have, and I felt for a long time insecure about what it is that I had to offer, because I knew that I just knew what I knew, how I developed it. And I knew what I knew through my experiences and from the nitty gritty work I did with collaborators and as an individual myself. And I knew what I had to offer. And I knew that I had the personality to connect with a lot of people. And I knew I had the skill to deliver what it is that they wanted. But when it comes from like an education perspective, I never had that confidence in like, here, I can perform this way and here's the proof. So it was always, and it was very lucky for me to receive that opportunity on the bar, where I reached out to this person who I was serving and
Nice.
kind of got into it the way I would, and got an opportunity to have an interview. Um, but I was very much reliant on throughout my life, my ability to like just connect with people. And that's how
Yeah.
I've gotten to where I am now.
A lot of people
And
get far that way. Their personality,
exactly,
right? The charisma you can deliver. So, and you can
exactly,
offer, and a lot of people lack that. Um,
100%.
but yeah, I did want to I forgot my point. Continue your
No,
point.
it's okay. I'm gonna keep going because this is actually what leads into everything else, into my 2020, my
For sure.
2019 year, where I was experiencing a lot of difficulties in my personal life, and I actually started to go to counseling at that time.
Hmm.
And I just started to, for the first time, and I've always, and I always say this, that I'm so grateful for that time, because as an individual who's very aware of like myself and the people around me and the decisions I make, like I'm
Right.
very, I've always been able to identify when I'm in a spot where it's like, this is dangerous, or like this is something this is toxic. Like I'm able to spot those things to avoid situations in my life.
Right.
And at the time I was having a difficulty, I was having like an identity crisis. Like, who the
Mm.
fuck am I? Who am I? What am I pursuing? What do I have to offer? I have all this insecurity about like actually going to pursue a real job, because I'm fearful that I don't have the qualifications that they might expect,
Right.
or whatever it is. So I went to counseling and I spoke a lot about everything I've done, my hustle, what I haven't done, my insecurities. And there's something that spoke to me that this guy said. And I had only gone to a few sessions and I haven't gone since, but it was enough to get my head straight about the direction I wanted to go into, and gave me enough power to pursue what it is that I'm doing and to continue succeeding in that.
Right.
But what he said to me was that, just reading from what I was mentioning about the kind of work ethic I carry, the pursuit that I am continuously on, is that a lot of people who have the paper or who have the diploma are in the industry where they're in and in the job that they get. And a lot of people believe that that's when you finish learning, right? Like
Yeah.
you finish your school,
Yeah.
you know everything. And,
Yeah.
and a lot of people at that point plateau or stay stagnant in their education and their development,
Yeah.
because they have this paper. They just become comfortable in the life that they've been living for all these years into like their 30s and 40s, from that point that they educated themselves in their 20s. And just a lot of people are less likely to continue pursuing their education and continue developing than they are to just become comfortable in what it is that they do. And what he said to me was that because you don't have that, and you don't have that comfort, you always find yourself trying to prove yourself.
Hmm.
And if you're continuing to prove yourself in every pursuit that you take, you're going to try your absolute best. And
Yeah.
that's your mentality. He said to me. He's like, and I knew that as a person, but for me to hear that like, obviously, because I have this insecurity of not being so formally educated, I'm
Yeah.
always trying so hard to prove myself and to develop myself on the side, to essentially develop the kind of experience that I believe somebody in my position should have. And I'm always doing that.
Yeah.
So,
It made you like
and that's,
not having the degree or that
mm,
title made you self-conscious about, pursuing all these ventures, when in reality you realize like all these things are made up by society. If you have, the passion to do it, if you have the intelligence, the charisma, I can connect it back to with filmmaking. I don't have any film school. Like, at least you took some steps. Like, you took the drama class, then you got an agent at one point. I was going into this completely like naked. Like, I knew nothing. I knew no one, but I just knew, I just knew one thing, and that was I love movies, and I think about them every day. I think about the stories that I want to create, and I was obsessed, because people often confuse passion with obsession. And when gets to a level where you're just constantly thinking, you should act on it. You should really listen to that. It's like a calling. And that's for me why I pursued kind of my path. And you can connect it back to how you distinguish yourself from so many other people that plateau or just keep stagnant once they receive that piece of paper, because I know for me that
yeah,
was kind of like a little bit of a feeling where, I said, oh, is this it? Like, I was 21 when I graduated, but I realized, there's so many opportunities you should never limit yourself from learning. And I like that you said that. You should never stop yourself, whether it's film, whether it's, reading a chapter a day. I always say, like, complete a book like at least once a week or a month. So yeah, I
yeah,
really that's really cool what that guy said, how he helped you,
yeah.
the counsel.
100%. And it was the key thing to elevating my own image of myself, and my own securities of what it is that I have to offer. And now that I have that, I feel like I've been on fire since. And I feel like even though 2020 has been fucking COVID shit show and
Yeah.
bleeding into this year, I still felt that fire about what I felt in that moment when I heard that. And that's something that I think you need to hear from someone else. There's a lot of things, and there's a lot of people who don't think that they need someone to talk to, or that they need
Yeah.
that, or they feel so self-aware that I don't need someone to tell me that. Like, that's how I carried myself for a long time, and I always take the opportunity when I'm given the chance to promote keeping up with your mental health, and especially in an environment like this where everyone feels very isolated, and
Well,
can feel very lonely.
yeah.
Like, it's important to be able to voice that. And and there's something really important that I also want to bring up as well, and it's a huge, I think, wake up call to a lot of people that might feel lonely in this time of like not connecting with people, their friends even. Like, there's a lot of people who and myself included, like, I was very, very close with a lot of people, and a lot of people who I used to see on a regular basis. And I know myself, I'm not a great texter. Like, I've always relied on that physical, in-person,
Yeah.
one-on-one,
Something we can both agree on for sure.
and
Yeah.
and it was very difficult. And I kind of dug myself a hole when COVID started, because I started to fall into this like bubble of isolation where, like, I never was a good texter. I always knew I would see people, and then I never really improved that ability to, like, or that
Hmm.
need, that necessity now these days to reach out to people. Because, like, there's a meme that's gone around, and it's really, and it's not even a funny meme, it's a real meme. It's like, don't judge people, or like, sorry, it was like this whole thing that was saying, like, remember the people who reached out to you during COVID.
I don't
And
remember. I didn't
then
see
it
that,
had,
but that's funny. That's
and then
interesting.
no, but it had that, it had that quote xed
Oh,
out,
okay,
and then on
okay.
top saying pretty much how everyone's going through their own level of
Yeah. You
isolation.
don't know what they're
Everyone's
going through.
experiencing, you don't know, people's lives are affected differently based on like the career they're pursuing, how that's developed or adjusted in this time. A lot of people who I know who work in like the bar and restaurant industry have been really shafted with like having to go on unemployment, and living a
Hmm.
completely different life.
Oh,
And
especially those guys. I remember like I knew some people in that industry, and I get, yeah, you would probably feel it as well because you shared that lifestyle like you, at one point, right? Like you know what it was like
yeah,
to rely on the tips and the
100%.
a lot of people, especially downtown, man. Like a lot of people didn't realize they were living downtown because they were able to because of their tips, right? Because of their
100%.
those things.
And
So
yeah, and because of all of this, like it's not fair to put that on other people. And I've really taken the time to reach out and network again, and just get in touch with people, because
that's great.
everyone's going through
Yeah,
their own thing. Like, it's really just coming from a point of like, being secure in yourself. And just because people don't message you every day doesn't mean that like, you don't have any fucking friends. Like
that's a big thing. We got, especially millennials, man. I got to tell ourselves because we're raised with that mentality. Like, especially when we were younger, we always feel that we were always told that if you don't hear from someone or you don't get a text because they don't like you or they don't want to talk to you, or whatever. But everyone has their own lives. Everyone's busy,
exactly.
right?
So I've been really working on that aspect, and just like reaching out to people again, and just like sort of trying to maintain that. But anyway, back to what we're talking about with the production.
Hmm.
How did you get into that, man? Like, I don't know if you've given sort of that spiel on your podcast on
Yeah,
previous episodes, but what was your like first real opportunity to do that outside of school?
yeah. So I'm always happy to talk about my origin story here. But I did want to, before I talk about that, I did want to touch on how you were mentioning networking and the importance of like keeping in contact, especially during the pandemic. The reason why I do these podcasts, yeah, it's a great way for content, right, and get out there. But I love connecting with people in the industry, people I haven't talked to in a long time, and it also uplifts them, right? Because it's the important thing is to have a sense of community, especially during these dire times, right? And to feel like everyone's connected. And people like us that like that face-to-face interaction, obviously we can't do it, physically, but we have this technology that we can take advantage of, right? And
Yeah.
why not capitalize on that? So this is why, connecting back to like staying creative and staying sane, we create stuff like that. But yeah, back to me. For me, man, I went through.
But yeah, back to me.
But back to my life.
This is my show. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, go.
I'm trying to answer this question without going off on a tangent. I'm talking about like, what are we talking about? Yeah, I know what we're talking. Okay, so yeah, but with film production, I had my own like sense of struggle with identity, and you were mentioning. I'm glad you mentioned about the whole thing about mental health and that awareness of the importance of like talking about things and getting things resolved. A lot of young men, especially, like don't feel the need to because of just the way society's structured. Like we feel like we're gonna get judged, or that pressure. Like we can't really voice how we're feeling, and I was just going through my own kind of journey. And again, I went through school. I got the job after. I worked corporate, but I was never satisfied. I never felt that satisfaction. That oh, I'm fulfilled. I'm doing what I have to do. As much as I was grateful for those experiences, there was just something missing. And again, always I've always said like I'm a very creative individual. That's how I see myself. And when I use the word creative, I mean like I can't sit still. I can never focus on one thing. I always like doing a bunch of different things. That's why with my content, I'm always podcasts, vlogs, and promos and productions and all these kind of things. I'm trying to balance. And funny enough, before the pandemic, I was going through a bit of a crisis as well. Like I was trying to figure out, I went to California. I don't know if you saw my photos. I went to California just before the pandemic.
How long were you there for?
2 weeks, almost 2 weeks, actually, 10 days. I did San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego. And the reason why I went there is because I was working so hard, man, like sales pretty much. And it was just like, taking over my mind. Like that's all I would think about is like phones and sales and tablets and all. It was just consuming my life. And I wasn't even doing anything remotely film. But I said, I worked here a year and there was a little bit of a situation. So I ended up going to California, and those 2 weeks kind of, I wouldn't say changed me, but just reminded me what my path was, reminded me what I was pursuing. And some people could say, well, how does a location remind you of that? And it's the creativity. It's LA, like the hub. I went to the Cinerama Dome, which was a huge hotspot. Like Tarantino loves it, who's a big hero of mine. And I just watched movies, and I connected with people at the skate park. I created a bunch of footage, which I used to expand my portfolio. That got me to the next project when I returned. So all these different things just, again, reminded me like there's another path you can pursue. It doesn't always have to be the path that society tells you, or it doesn't have to always be, the path that you told yourself that you have to pursue. Now, I'm very fortunate, again, where I have a different situation where I gave myself that opportunity. I gave myself like, hey, like let me see what I can do in a year. You know what I mean? Whereas for you, like, you have a family. I'm glad you brought that up. It's very different. And I'm glad you're honest about that. Like you have to have that balance. But for me, it's more like, hey, let me just stick it out. I really don't have anyone that's depending on me, as far as I know. So I just want to, I don't want to see.
You're gonna get a phone call. Daniel, what the fuck? Your kid's like 5. You don't return my calls. Shit.
You're breaking up. But yeah, so as far as I know, that hasn't happened yet. However, I looked at so as 2020 approached, right, I was like, okay, like what can I do? So I always wanted, I'm always long term, so I'm always thinking like like the vision, what, like if I make these movies, like what's going to be like at the beginning credits, the end credits. Like again, I'm thinking logistically, but I'm also thinking creative. I don't know if you're like that. Like, is my name going to appear in the beginning? Like, can you imagine?
100%.
Do you know what I'm talking about? So with Tarantino, his movies, that's why I always kind of model my path is every time his movie starts, it's always a band apart. It's always his logo, right? And I'm like, oh, that's sick. Like it's Miramax, but then it's like, boom, like that's his like brand, like his stamp. And I never really understood the concept of what it means to have a production company. Yet as I networked with more people, as I've shadowed and then been on set, I realized a lot of filmmakers, a lot of people at our level have their own little production companies, have their outlets to create content and use them, to get their voice out there. And I said to myself, that'd be great. So I started 94 Productions, and I called it 94 because 94 is the year I was born, right?
Represent.
I represent, exactly. And it's no joke. It's actually to represent, all the friends, all the people, like including you, like that share the same like vision. But I also, it's the year where Tarantino's movie Pulp Fiction, that's the year that made him. And because I idolize him so much, it just so happens to be the same year, 1994, Pulp Fiction was released. So I said 94 is like, perfect. Like I love it. It's like a hockey jersey, right? You slap on the number, the year you were born, right? And you wear it, right? So I started 94 Productions, and, I created that logo you saw. I was getting pumped. Made a few contacts, did like a video or two, and then the lockdown happened. And that's when, back to your point, I just felt like trash. Like
when did you start your production company?
January 3rd.
January 3rd, 2020?
2020, bro.
I started my production November 5th, 2019.
That's crazy. I'm telling you,
I feel like we're on like the same
frequency.
Wavelength.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like we started it, we're like, you know what? And at that point, because I had been thinking about it for a long time, and I was like, and back to a conversation we had over text and about like my YouTube channel and all that shit. I never wanted to do anything until I knew I was going to be able to do it consistently. And sure, I have these urges to like create, but what's the point of doing that on a platform like YouTube or Instagram if you're not going to keep coming? You know what I mean? Because anybody could just like make a one-time thing and then cool, that was cool. And then everyone falls off because there's nothing to back it up. So I always was like, okay, like I always knew I had like these side projects, these things that I'm like, I knew people would love, but what's my brand? How am I going to elevate that? How am I going to be consistent? So it took me so long to like, be like, okay, like I'll have the time. And because around that time, like my daughter was already born, she was like 3 years old. And I'm like, I have like a huge commitment there. Do I have the time to do my day job, be a dad, and then do this shit on the side without compromising any things that I need to do in my life? And I literally just started by making an Instagram account for it. And I'm like, I didn't have a website,
that's so
I didn't
smart.
have anything. I just made an Instagram account, put something up, and I'm like, okay, shit, this is manageable. And it's kind of just like breaking the ice to doing what it is that you want to do. Because the more you think about something, the more you're going to think about all the reasons that maybe if you're insecure, that maybe you can't do it, maybe all the things that will drive you to just maybe hold it off until further notice, which can be years if you allow that to do. But there's actually a video I want to send you maybe after the call of something that really resonated with me and really just post 2020 sparked that ambition to continue going. And I know we've spoken about it, but there's a podcast that I'm looking to begin as well. And it all just stemmed from watching this video about this person who was just like, just press record. Like the more you think about it,
that's so true, man.
You know what I mean?
With this podcast, man, like people, I remember in the beginning, like, oh, I always wanted to start a podcast, and you need this microphone and that headphone and that. And I said, nah, there must be another way. And that's kind of like the person I am. I'm always resourceful. I'm always trying to figure out, like, how can I get around it? How can I, I'm not going to invest thousands of dollars in a microphone, and then the other guy talking is going to be on, he's not going to invest the same amount of money on a microphone, because I plan to have other guests, and I can't expect all my guests to have the same quality. So I'm like, what can I do something where we're both on the same level, and we're managing ourselves here. And that's why with Zoom, like, for anyone who wants to start a podcast, go on Zoom. Quality is possible for me. Have no complaints. Record the phone call, record the conversation, and just upload it.
And it's like kind of been the approach of a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people are doing this, so I don't think it's something to like be looked down on. Like, oh, you're using Zoom. Like everybody's fucked. This is the only way. So it's like I feel like we're each. And I was thinking about this a lot, man. I've really been thinking about how like the pandemic is affecting a lot of people, and a lot of people in our industry specifically, and everyone's experiencing the same thing, and there's only so many outlets. And I think that because it's such a simple resolution, it makes it even easier for people to hop on, because like back in the day, people had people on their finished studio couches with their brand and all this. And like, you're like looking at that, you're like, oh fuck, I need to
I can
studio.
never, yeah.
I need a whole sign. I need a whole thing. And I remember thinking about that about my YouTube. I'm like, oh shit, I can't just do it in this corner. I need to like make a background. I need to
I need to put a fucking
something,
neon, I
put
need
a
a neon
neon
sign that says
sign.
live and learn or some shit, some stupid
So
inspirational message.
so I really, and I feel like a lot of people like are like shit. And like now that people can't have people on their thing, a lot of people are just doing Zoom calls. And this is
Yeah.
so accessible for so many people. And if this is like the platform people are getting used to using now, I feel like that's the perfect time for people to hop
Bro, there's
on
so
and
many YouTube
like
videos I
and not
watch.
feel like amateurs and not feel like
Yeah.
amateurs.
But I just want to say there's so many YouTube videos I watch where it's like, back to what you're saying, even me when I started these vlogs, I literally just started, right? As you can tell. But they were just me like, sitting on a couch talking, and I add some editing here and there. But with regards to like, all the other videos you can compete with, it's like, wow, like I'm never going to get to that point because they're like, the production value is insane. But then I went to another side of YouTube, mental health and like talking about horoscopes, just like random stuff. And I got through so much content where there was not even an intro. The video just starts like, hey guys, welcome to my channel. And then you look down and the subscribers, it's like 500,000. And that's when I realizes that it's not about all the flashy, like boom, 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 what I can do. Yeah, sure, people like it. Don't get me wrong, look at PewDiePie. However, it's the content you're selling, like what you're saying, and
Exactly.
it's interesting because people will say, oh, who's going to watch that, right? Like, who's going to listen to that? Joe Rogan said it on his pod. He's number one in the world, right? And when he first started his podcast, it took him obviously like 10 years to get to the point where he is. But when he first started, he said that his friends weren't even interested. And some of his friends, after a 3-hour conversation, would say, don't even post all of it. Just cut it up. Like, no one's going to listen to that shit. And he's like, I don't give a shit. He's like, I'll listen to it. Like, in other words, like, there's people out there that will listen to it. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
and people just enjoy it. Like, for example, my videos, like there was a time when I was like thinking, are people going to really listen like how to my morning routine, like, making their bed and whatever. But I look at it as I watch those videos, and there's probably a lot of people like myself, that will watch those videos too, because they want to know how to better themselves and become a better individual. And if I can improve someone's life,
100%.
then you know what I mean? That's what fulfills me. And it doesn't always have to be about, making movies and being creative and whatever. It can be uplifting someone's life and inspiring. So I'm very much into that, and I'm happy that you discussed about mental health awareness and just
Yeah.
the importance of that, because we don't talk about it as much, man. And I don't know if you've like seen like a lot of young men, like they suffer with that. A lot of young men, they
100%.
suffer with the pressures. Like they feel like they need to keep it on the inside. I'm not saying vent all your feelings to just anyone, but just know that there's people like myself, people like Marc Anthony, that are going through their own insecurities, their own dilemmas, their own pressures.
Exactly.
And I guess we keep saying through the creative outlets, right? Through producing content. If you're consuming more than you're producing, you're gonna go insane. You're gonna create yourself a hole. But if
And I'm
you're
going to touch on something that you've touched on
yeah,
this
for
podcast as well and on your vlogs, and it's about not comparing yourself to people.
sure.
And this is something that is so imperative, man, because the moment you get into a hole of like comparing yourself to others and looking at people who have completely different situations, lives, accessibilities than you, like that'll hinder someone so much so as to not pursue their dreams. And
Yeah.
if and back to what you're saying about like, what, like Joe Rogan saying, fuck it, I'm putting up the whole thing, that's what I'll watch, people will watch it, there's a market for
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And I think that if you just keep your mind focused while you're creating content on what it is that you want to create,
Right.
you will reach out to that audience natively, because that's what you're putting out,
If
and
there's
people will
genuine
continue to
intention.
watch it.
Yeah. If you have good
And if
intention.
there's exactly.
Yeah.
And if you continue, or if you go down a path of like creating content and then really, not that you shouldn't listen to your audience, but like
Right.
there's a lot of internet hate. You're always going to get trolls. You're always going to get some sort of negativity, and that oftentimes off puts people and then maybe even discourages them to create content. But if you just stay on your track of creating what it is that you intended to create on whatever platform you've decided to establish yourself on, people will be attracted to your personality.
Yeah.
Especially in this environment, like people will be like, I've listened to your vlogs, your podcasts on your thing, and you're
you,
like something that I think you have going for you,
yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
is just your tone, the way that you deliver your content, your information. It's very and like the music, the way you mix everything, but your tone is just so calm, and it makes me want to listen, because
Oh,
I
thank
listen
you,
and
man.
then no,
Thank
and then
you.
like this is something 100%. This is something that I wanted to tell you, but like something that I really picked up from your videos. It's
Yeah.
like there's a lot of people that you'll watch online, and it's like they're super energetic, really extra, and
Or
then
they're
like
just angry at the camera. That's what throws me off, is like, why is this guy yelling at me? Like, I feel like he knows me.
you know what I
Do
mean?
you know what I mean?
But like, and also the content that you release about, it's very like self-help, very um like what we're talking about like mental health, and like not comparing yourself to people, things you can do to better yourself, improve. Like you have good intention with what it is that you're saying, and I think that it translates well, and I think that it translates in a way that people want to digest that information. People
Thank you.
want
Yeah.
to, because I, as a extrovert and always positive kind of guy, I feel like sometimes I come off as like really extra to a lot of people.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, like, and especially to people who are a little bit more introverted, it's like, oh, like I don't have all that energy and you're so fucking
Yeah.
happy and all this. Like that doesn't resonate with a lot of people, because like as the fact
No,
of the matter is not a,
I would consider myself, see, I would consider myself both. And I can be an extrovert just as much as an introvert. And I know exactly what you mean. I get those looks, I get those judgments where it's like,
but what
I
I'm
just like
saying is
being
that for
like, yeah,
you,
yeah,
what I'm saying is that for you, it
yeah.
works because you deliver it in a calm,
Hmm.
like really digestible way.
Oh, thank you.
I'm saying this as if I were to have created the same content in my energy. Like it's for some people, but I feel like your energy and in the way that you approach your content
Hmm.
is really good. And that's just something that I've learned from like, picking up on what people are able to digest easily, especially if you're touching on like mental health. It's people who are just a little bit more timid, people who are who have naturally have a little bit more insecurity and want to hear from someone who's not so happy, and then
Yeah.
them comparing themselves to maybe being something like that. But if you digest and present your content in the way that you do, I think you'll be very successful
Oh,
in
thank you, man.
in that. Yeah,
I really appreciate it. I just
yeah.
want to say,
So keep
like,
it up.
thank you. Yeah, I'm glad this is what I want to mention to the audience too. Like, my videos are nowhere near, millions of views or thousands at least. Like, I get, a few if I'm lucky, but you never know who's watching. And that's including my friend here, Marc Anthony, where it's like, you see how he was inspired by these videos, and he voiced it to me like, thanks for sharing this content. Don't be intimidated by the numbers. Don't feel like you need 1,000 views or 2,000 views or 50,000 views to make it worth making. Just put it out
Exactly.
there, because you never know if you're inspiring a friend, a colleague, a contact, a potential client. And with my videos, I just want to mention the intention. I'm glad you mentioned that I'm very calm, and the way I'm speaking, that's just kind of how I want to present
Come
myself, but
across.
come across exactly like, to make it my big thing is articulating the information in such a way where I also provide context, I give examples. But I also, what I explained to my family too, like when I was first starting it, because they're big fans of my work, and they're always like, what are you doing next? And they're like my managers, like, why are you putting that out? Are you sure you want to do that? And I was explaining, like, I'm trying to be as authentic as I can. Like, when you hear how I talk, when you can just tell by like my mannerisms, my emotions, it's like there's no bullshit. I'm not trying to, like, rip you off or
Sugar
like
coated or
sugarcoat
whatever.
it or anything like that. It's just kind of like, that's why I give my examples. I don't know if in my videos, you know how I talk about like film or what I experienced, or in one video I said I lost my job and I was feeling devastated. And I believe that, yeah, okay, it's scary. Like, you don't want to talk about yourself, because some people could like take advantage of that and like use it against you. I don't know. But I feel like sometimes you need to just throw a little bit of vulnerability, humility, because people can connect to that, and people will feel even more that they can trust you. You know what I mean? They can trust your
Exactly.
content, and they will listen to you more and more, right? And having this conversation like yourself, it's not even like you were like, yeah, I did this, I did that, and then I got the movie and boom, like, you know what I mean? It's no, I went through, a lot of hiccups. I had to reassess my life. I was going through an identity crisis, and people connect to that. People start to see the humanity in you,
100%. And like
and it's
that's
very important. Yeah.
and something that you touched on, and I was very touched by this video because it was so relevant, and it was just like the content that you're putting out is good, man. I want to just put some positive reinforcement out there for yourself. And it's about you know um, wow, what am I talking about? Sorry. There was this it was like sorry, no, I lost my train of thought.
What's in that drink? Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
worm. That's a
Right.
Mexican worm. No,
There you go. Take
it
your
was
time, buddy.
about
Take your time.
how it's easy to get caught up in it's easy to get caught up in someone's highlight reel,
Oh yeah.
and it's easy to get it's easy to get caught up in, like, when you're comparing yourself to people, like, people are only putting their highlight reel, people, like, their positivity, their their positive moves, their right steps, and don't show a lot of their their hiccups. And I feel
Hmm.
like I've maybe come across before in my in my late teens, early 20s, as like someone who was just like always trying to say, oh, yo, like, I've been really good, and you know what I
Yeah.
mean, and like whatever, and all this and all that. But it's like, when you're creating content, it's about relating to people, and a lot of people leave out the hardships, but it's about embracing that. And ultimately, if you're putting out content and it's to relate to people, like, that's your goal, like, you have to be able to, like, express the emotions that a lot of people are experiencing out there. And that's what goes to build the trust with your community.
Yeah.
Because if someone just hears the good stuff, and then, like, they'll maybe even resent your content, because it's just like, oh, this guy doesn't go through anything and I'm going through all this and whatever. But it helps you become relatable, helps you humanize yourself as a personality on the internet, and ultimately gets people to trust you. And I think
But
that that's so important
yeah,
to voice those hardships and the things that you had to go through, and can be ultimately inspiring to people trying to do the same.
for sure. But I was going to mention, I'm glad you brought up the highlight reel, is because, another thing is if you always talk about good things, people won't connect. But also, if you do mention something that's very hard hitting, because I listen to vlogs all the time, and there are some that when they mention something that's like, how do you deal with this? It's like it's almost like condescending, like they don't give an example, or they don't give some like window to their life, or maybe an experience how they overcame it. And if I can provide just like a sense, or some sanity, like, there's other people like me that have gone through it. The highlight reel, I'll give you an example. I mentioned in the video, and I'm sure you remember it, where I said, I used to think for the longest time what I saw on social media was a reflection of real life. And that's actually the honest truth. Like, sometimes, again, because I'm a creative individual, I think like in movies, like whatever you see, like that, it's happening, like that's the story that's being told. But I tell myself, like, no, that's not the case. And some guy just messaged me randomly now and was like, um, I don't think it was in a rude way. He was just kind of just throwing it out there, like, blatantly, and you just gotta kill him with kindness. Like, can't believe, like, you thought. He's like, you shouldn't think of see other people's lives and compare them with yours, or whatever, right? Like, he just said it like that, like, very dry, and I just said, live and learn, right? In other words, it's like, you know, we can't we don't know how we go through these experiences. We don't know, like, what we're gonna handle. It's just about, it's just
Bring it
it's
out your all.
yeah, it's just our responsibility, like, to identify, like, what's bothering us, but how to improve on it. And I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm going on a rant.
No, no,
This is
no, it's all
gonna be
right.
cut out.
No, it's all right. Keep this in, because this actually completely resonates with my tattoo here.
What is
And
that? Oh yeah, man.
so, my tattoo.
What
No,
does that
no,
say?
it says
Oh, uncharted.
uncharted,
Oh my.
uncharted territory.
Oh yeah, yeah, okay,
So,
okay.
and
We'll have to have a
what?
gaming podcast soon, because
Oh
that's another
shit.
that's another one. I don't know if you got time, but
No,
we
no,
could talk.
I actually gotta hop off soon.
No, no, no
But
worries. We'll hop off. Yeah, yeah.
but um, but what this tattoo means is basically experiencing the unknown and stepping into opportunities that you might not even be experienced in, but all you have is your ability to showcase your skills.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I love proving myself. I love being in a situation where I can demonstrate to new people what I can do. And that's all uncharted territory. And you'll spend your life experiencing moments of uncharted territory in your experiences, your life. And I think that it's all about maintaining your approach, because over time it can be tiring to continue to
Yeah.
start from scratch and continue to have to, and I deal with that constantly at my work, where I'll be changing teams and then I have to reestablish myself as a creator on new terms, on based on this team's objectives and this team's content visions, and I'm constantly in that environment where I'm doing that, and that's something that I think I thrive in, and I think that that it's a very useful skill to have, to be able to adapt, and especially in well, not especially in our industry, but in our industry, like you're constantly experiencing new environments and new stories to tell, and you have to often change how your production adapts to the story you're trying to tell, whether it's with the cinematography, the writing, the blocking, your actors. Like there's like that's what I've admired about filming, is that it's always something different, and you're always telling a different story. You're always you're always, there's always something new to learn from and something new to adapt your approach to. And
Yeah, before I want
very
to,
powerful.
before we go, I want to mention, that's why I remembered is, I always connect it back to how I approach my content. I always connect it back to storytelling. And when I watch a good movie, like I was watching The King of Staten Island yesterday, I thought it was a pretty good movie with Pete Davidson. And have you heard of it, man? Have you watched it?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've
And
seen
what
it.
I'm saying is that, like, what I always love movies, like the cool side, what makes them, appealing is just to see the underdog, like the guy who's been through the rut. Like, I'm always a big fan of those biographical films where it's like in the back of your head, he's going to become famous and successful, but you just see all the shit he went through. And it just reminds yourself as he's going through, like 8 Mile, perfect example for me. When I watch that movie, I'm just like pumped up the whole time because I'm just like, oh, like he went through that, but then watch, he's going to show him when that guy told him you're fired, whatever. And it doesn't always have to lead to fame or money, but if it leads to some form of success, seeing that path, seeing that underdog story is so uplifting, so captivating. And
Exactly.
back to my content and back to like social media, it's like people forget that when you show that vulnerable side, when you show a bit of the humility, right? Like Justin Bieber, I know you're a fan of him too, right? You enjoy his
Yeah,
content. Yeah, he posted him getting arrested, right? And you remember in high school, people used to talk shit about him all the time. Like it was just a thing. Like everyone, no one liked him. But now, everyone likes him, whatever. But he
have you
posted it.
seen any of his content that he's
Yeah,
posted on YouTube?
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, the seasons, right?
Yeah,
Seasons
seasons.
and that little documentary did with his wife. But again, these things, which by the way, my sister never was a fan. All of a sudden, like, yeah, like not too crazy about the music, but like likes him enough that she's drawn into
His
the
experiences.
storytelling. Yeah, she even says, she's like, look what he went through, whatever. And this is what
Exactly.
I'm trying to tell people is, it's okay to say I've effed up. I've gone through failure. I've messed up. It's okay to wear those battle scars, as Gary Vee says, right? There's a reason why these people are always endorsing these concepts, is because you need to embrace that failure is success, right? Like my recent video, The Happiness Advantage, falling up. Use failure as a window to what's going to happen next. Like, how do I pivot? How do I adjust? And through this conversation, we've identified our failures, we've identified our pitfalls, and there's probably more discussions we're going to have where we're going to, encounter. But this has been a great conversation, and this has been a great insight into our world. And just catching up, like all these years, we plan to collaborate and make more content, especially when things settle. So I'm really happy that we reconnected, and I'm really happy that I have a friend and someone I can I'm inspired by and I admire that's in the same field, because there's nothing worse than doing it on your own, kind of thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
man. There's yeah, and that's why, back to my note at the beginning about like networking and connecting, it's so important for us to do that, and especially when we're leading our own charge and we're creating our own content, like we're the only people who are going to do that for ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's about like getting in touch with people who are doing what you do, people who inspire you, keeping a circle of like healthy progressive development. Like I'm all about that. And if there's anything COVID has allowed me to sort of like suss out, it's just like keeping the right people around me, you know what I mean? And
Exactly,
there's a
man.
lot of people that you'd be friends with just to be friends with back in the day, but now that you're kind of in an experience where it's like you have to select who you're with, really, like there's not really many outlets of like connecting with people and like being in contact. Like you just need to keep the right reinforcement around you. So
Yeah,
yeah, if there's anything I'm
avoid the
going to leave
toxic.
anybody on this call with, Yeah,
avoid
it's
the
just
toxic environment, right?
exactly. Keep a clean circle, keep an environment where you'll be able to get back on track or continue to do the great stuff that you're doing and to produce the right content that fits your passions and everything. It's just there's no one to compare yourself to except yourself. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And
Like
yesterday, what happened yesterday?
exactly. Look at yourself, see how you can develop, look at who inspires you and see how you can incorporate new elements into your process. And that's all you should be taking from people. And that's the right approach to take because inspiration is necessary. It's how you grow. Don't compare yourself to the people who inspire you. Use those tactics and that information to digest it into a way that you can better communicate your story. And that's I feel the healthiest way to look at people who you might potentially compare yourself to, but it's just to turn that into a learning curve. You
And
know,
remind
develop
yourself that
yourself.
that person you're comparing yourself to was a nobody,
Started
just like you at one point.
started where you were. You
Yeah.
know, they had a message to put out. They put it out there. They reaped the benefits of their efforts, and that's where we're all starting. So we
Yeah,
can't
man.
expect to be there tomorrow, but you know, like as long as we continue to do that and reach the right people and market ourselves accordingly, we'll get there in no time. But I'm
Yeah.
happy to be on here, man. Thank you so much
Yeah, no
for
worries.
having me.
Thanks again for joining, man. We plan to do more of these. So stay tuned, everybody, and we'll talk soon, all right?
Cheers, man.
Take care, buddy. Have a good day.